Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's session. We're just waiting for the last few people to come through the lobby, but I'm delighted to join you today. I think it's my first online session of 2026. I don't know how I've got away with it until the 28th of January. So I will wish everybody a happy new year because it's been my first opportunity to do so. It's a pleasure today to chair today's webinar, which is a special event that shines the light on the vital that colleagues at Coram Pacey have been doing to support local authorities with childminding development, in particular, to look at a case that highlights the approaches being used by Pacey in the development of childminding places and the increase or the sustainability of childminding places in that county. So I will give you a welcome and introduction, and I've got a little bit of breaking news for you as well. And then Carle from Coram Pacey will give us a presentation on the role of childminding in your strategies, and explore the case study that you will get a copy of their project in Cambridge. Of course, the whole point of an event like this is to hear that sort of information and have the opportunity to scrutinise it, to question it, and everything about it. So before I say more about the purpose of today's session, let me give you that breaking news in the next slide, which is my first opportunity this year to give you some information about the exciting developments that we have at the Coram Group this year. This is the first time that we're officially telling the world out there that what's coming up for us in 2026, which is the creation of a new centre within the Thomas Coram Foundation Group, which is the creation of the Coram Centre for Childcare and Early Years. You will know that Hempsalls became Coram Hempsalls over 2 years ago now, and we are thrilled to be working across the group at Coram and to be working more closely with Coram Family and Childcare, of course, who have been much longer than we have. But in the summer, we were joined by Pacey, who became Coram Pacey, an organisation I know that many of you are very fond of, and we warmly welcomed Pacey colleagues to the group. Of course, that offered a fantastic opportunity for us to think about how the three organisations align and collaborate. And indeed, it's these three entities within the group that are forming the centre. And what we're aiming to do is to do what we can to join up our services, of course, but to be complementary, to add value to what we all do, and to maximise our input and impact by working close together. So look out for more developments from us, protecting our uniqueness, but also adding value to how we work collaboratively. So we're really excited about that. And this is a really good example today of an event that speaks to that mission to bring communities and contacts together to look at what our services look like and how we can all benefit. So next slide then. Let me set the scene for what we're going to do today. We all know that the local authority landscape in early years has been going through some significant change. In fact, I've just done a review of 2025 and look forward to 2026, and you'll be getting that in your inboxes in the next few days. Of course, we're all being asked, aren't we, to respond to new expectations, new pressures, and new opportunities all at the same time. And we know that childminding can be a really powerful part of the solution. Flexible, community-based, and able to meet the needs of babies, children, and families in ways that other provisions just simply cannot. But childminding doesn't happen by accident, does it? It thrives when we all have the insight and the right tools and the right support to build strong, sustainable childminding pathways. And that's exactly where we, I think, can all agree that local authorities and Coram Pacey have invaluable roles. We offer practical guidance, hands-on development work, and understanding of what happens on the ground, as well as, and of course, Pacey also influence national policy and represent their 14,000 members, which is a significant body of professionals. Now, we love a case study, don't we? So today is about showcasing that work. It's about sharing the learning, celebrating progress, being honest about the challenges that remain. But most importantly, this session is about helping you, the people leading this work locally, to feel equipped, confident, connected in your next steps. So today we have that presentation. We will record the presentation, not the questions and answers and discussion afterwards, and we will share the recording of this presentation. We will also share the PDF of the slides, and you will get the copy of the case study that documents the Cambridgeshire approach. So we've got a rich agenda today, real example, real data, real stories. So I do encourage you to ask questions, to challenge ideas, to share your own experiences, to listen and benchmark, to scribble ideas, actions or thoughts, because this is a space, as usual, for collaboration, not to listen to a presentation. Okay, so after the presentation, do feel that you can get involved, put things in the chat, put your hand up and we can talk, we can question, we can scrutinise and we can discuss the content of today's presentation. Okay, so that's your introduction from me. It's a pleasure to introduce Carla from Coram Pacey, head of Coram Pacey, the newish head of Coram Pacey, who will take us through that presentation. And Carla is joined by her colleague Caroline from the Cambridgeshire team as well. Morning.
Morning. Hi, lovely. Thank you, James, for that introduction. It's really great to be here and talk to you all about Childminders today. I want to talk about their contribution to the sector and the support that we can provide to help you build your Childminder strategy. I just want to give a little bit of context first nationally, because I think it's always important to step back from the local authority level and think about nationally those childminder numbers. So, you know, as of August 25, we had 25,000 childminders in England. And I think, you know, that is based on the passion and commitment of those 25,000 childminders and the local authorities supporting them without a kind of national strategy in place. So I think, you know, whilst there were 60,000 registered childminders 10 years ago, and we have seen that dip and then almost halve, I think there are huge positives that we still need to take. There are around 20 local authorities that have seen an increase in childminder numbers, and many more that are seeing numbers remain consistent. So this is why I want to start sharing that knowledge across local authorities from Coram Pacey and Coram Hempsall, and start to think about how we can all support each other to share the knowledge and what works for childminder recruitment, childminder retention. And so just thinking about nationally, you know, childminders still make up 42% of early years providers, which I think is a huge number, considering, you know, we always talk about the declining childminders, and they provide 12% of early years places. So that's 151,000 early years places, which is obviously just so important for the children and the family that they support. And I think another really good stat here is actually, and it was more than I thought it was, 19% of childminders employ assistants. So for me, I'm just thinking about, right, childminders and childminding assistants. Childminding assistants are the next generation that I see as childminders, and so what support can we give to them to make sure that we are seeing them grow into childminders themselves rather than moving into kind of group settings. So that's a lot of the work that we're doing around childminders and childminding assistants at Pacey. Next slide, please. Again, I just want to step back and just remind everyone about kind of the positive impact of childminders on children and families, because I think childminders have a USP, many USPs that we don't do enough to promote to families and amongst kind of local authority colleagues. And I think we really need to kind of reconsider and we start sharing that. So, as you know, they offer flexible care to working parents. We've just published another case study on childminders in Thurrock, if there are any Thurrock colleagues here, where a lot of parents are shift workers. And in that case study, it really looks at how childminders have tailored their business to support the needs in their area. And that flexibility is still so important for parents. But also the continuity of care for parents who are looking for wraparound care is important, and that's what childminders can offer. It's a well-known USP, but one we take for granted, that home from home setting that suits so many children, and is the preference of parents. Sometimes when we take that choice away, we forget that actually parents want that home from home setting, as well as the fact that it suits so many children. So that's something that I think we, Coram Pacey, need to work on. How do we get that out there more? We need to show the positive impact of that home from home setting on children, and that's what we're working on at the moment. And again, so many childminders can and do offer specialist SEND care. Their home settings support this. We just need to do more as a sector to support them to deliver this in more areas. But it's obviously such an important part of the SEND sector. Childminders can play an important part there. And again, something we absolutely take for granted is the freedom of childminding. You know, trips out, learning life skills from simple trips to the shop, activities, days out, making the most of what the local area has to offer. I spoke to a group of childminders last week in the evening, and it was the week, I think it was last week, when it was raining non-stop. And every single one of those childminders said that they had taken out the children in the rain that day. And, you know, that might be a surprise to some, but I just think it goes to show the freedom that childminders have. And how unique that is, and how kind of it's not the norm. You know, some of the activities that do, and that's so important for children to be a part of. So I think sometimes, you know, we feel that we know the USPs of childminding. I think we rely very heavily on the fact that we think other people know the USPs of childminders, but there's a lot of work to be done to make sure that that word gets out there to parents and to families, to ensure that they know what the choices are and they know the difference between childminding and group settings. You know, they know that childminders 98% are registered good or outstanding with Ofsted, just like group settings, and they can make that decision for themselves. So that's a lot of the work that we'll be doing this year with our kind of parent awareness campaign, which we'll be updating everyone on soon. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we're just going to look at the case study on Cambridgeshire, and the childminder support contract that we have in place there. I want to give a little bit of context around the numbers in the contract, and then we'll go into kind of the strategy there. So there are around 410 childminders in Cambridgeshire, with 302 of those delivering government-funded entitlement sessions. We've held the contract there to deliver childminder support for over 24 years. It's been a long-running contract, but we do have to tender at every renewal. And this contract includes work to recruit new childminders in the area, provide extensive pre-registration support, which we will go into, and ongoing childminder retention support. The team delivering the contract and supporting these 410 childminders consists of one service manager and 4 development officers. And we enjoyed today by Caroline, the service manager, if you give us a wave, who's kind of here to answer any questions anyone has on the work that her and her team do in the area. And they support all childminders, so I want to kind of be very clear on that. Every single childminder in their area they support, whether they're Ofsted registered or they work with an agency, whether they're members of Coram Pacey or not. And this contract requires contact with 100% of childminders in every year of the contract. This has always been achieved, and it ensures that childminders do not feel isolated or unsure of where to access support. Next slide, please. So a large part of the team's work involves executing a recruitment strategy. First, areas of need are identified, followed by working with partners, groups of childminders and family audiences to promote and recruit prospective childminders. And I think so many local authorities have do this. They have a recruitment strategy, and this is how Cambridgeshire carries out that strategy. So they will do things like social media campaigns using the Child and Family Centre contacts as well as Bernardo's, networking with online groups set up by childminders, sending information to Job Centre Plus leads. I know, Caroline, you work very closely with Job Centre Plus and you have a certain package for them, family liaison officers of the armed forces. They use registered childminders in the area to share marketing collateral on their own social pages, and this is obviously a huge part of the childminder community and how they can play a part in recruiting childminders themselves. And they send information in schools to include in their parent communications. The team also have termly planning meetings with the 0 to 25 places planning team to look at recruitment campaigns, including visiting local toddler groups, sending information to local house builders for inclusion in new homeowner packs, and speaking to specific schools and child and family centres. So there's a lot of work, and it's a strategy in itself, this recruitment strategy. But this is only beneficial where there's adequate support and structure in place afterwards that sees the childminder all the way through pre-registration training, officer registration and beyond. So, in Cambridgeshire, the pre-registration support is extensive, and that's really what makes that difference in making sure that childminders who enter the profession understand what they need to, what is required of them, and understand what is going to be part of their kind of profession moving forward. So just in terms of recruitment in Cambridgeshire, at the time of writing the case study, they had 46 new childminders registering since 2024, in January 24. I think, Caroline, you've updated that number today, and it's now, is that 57 new
57.
childminders? Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
24, thank you. Next slide, please. Now, just thinking about pre-registration support, which I said Cambridgeshire do very extensively. They are heavily involved in ensuring prospective childminders are aware, prepared and committed. All childminders registering in Cambridgeshire attend a 2-hour pre-registration session plus 4 2-hour ready-to-mind sessions. The ready-to-mind sessions cover all aspects that prospective childminders need to start their childminding career, including SEND, child protection, observation, assessment and planning, and running a childminding business. So this is a significant time commitment, but ensures that prospective childminders are prepared to start the childminding career with both the national and local knowledge they will need. So these childminders are then supported through setting up their new childminding business. All receive a visit from the team prior to their first graded inspection. This is a commitment beyond what many local authorities do, but vital in ensuring that childminders have everything in place for the childminding business. As a result, we hope they feel supported, less isolated, and are clear of what to expect from the first graded inspection. The team plan this visit when the first children arrive in the setting and gift a welcome pack, which is a really nice touch, and providing all the information they need in the early stages of the childminding journey. And in terms of quality, this support has seen in the last 3 years, 248 out of 150 childminders. Oh, sorry, that's a typo there. 248 out of 250 childminders receive a good or outstanding grading for Ofsted in their first inspection. And obviously, this is the old Ofsted inspections, which ended in October. So we do need to think about how we look at that data moving forward, how we compare childminders amongst other settings. But what is really positive in Cambridgeshire is 19% of childminders received an outstanding Ofsted inspection. And I think that's versus the 12% that we see nationally. So that extra support for childminders does go a long way in terms of the quality of the childcare that they provide. Next slide, please. Okay, now thinking about ongoing childminder retention. The contract, as I said before, does require contact with 100% of childminders in every year. This has always been achieved, ensuring that childminders do not feel isolated and know where to access support. As many of you know, isolation and loneliness within the childminding role is why many of childminders leave the profession. So it's evident that this one-to-one contact and checking in does make a difference. It's not always possible in terms of the numbers of childminders, the resources that local authorities have. So this is why a contract like the Cambridgeshire one really does take care of that for the local authority. Childminders are offered support on all manner of things, including ideas to advertise their settings, which we know that childminders aren't necessarily the best at, and marketing their own business. Early years funding, and using the funding portal. Again, I know that can be quite frustrating for many childminders, the funding portal. Safeguarding, training, business support, holiday activities and food programme referrals to access grants, and including wraparound childcare. So additional retention initiatives include support for childminders working with SEND children, including their own SEND training, telephone and/or visit support, and signposting to SEND services and other professionals. Monthly newsletters sent to all childminders to help them stay up to date with all the latest things happening in their area and in the childminding sector. And intervention, there is intensive support from our team, from a dedicated support officer. Contact is made within 24 hours in a support programme designed around the issues raised by Ofsted or LADO. larder. Thank you. Next slide, please. So just looking at how local authorities can achieve outcomes for childminders, thinking about quality and continuity of care. You all know that the government removed the requirement in the EYFS for childminders to undertake training. Whilst we're really confident that most childminders still undertake training, we do sometimes have concerns around how this change impacts the new childminders coming into the profession. We have spoken to some local authorities who are now requesting training as to be undertaken in order for them to access grants. And I think this is something that I would love to encourage all local authorities to do in order to achieve the quality of the new childminders that we want, and to make sure that they feel supported and they feel like they're a trained professional coming into the business. Startup grants. So when the £600 startup grant came out from the government, we had concerns around, right, £600 is not enough to start up your business from scratch. However, we do know from local authorities that actually it did go some way towards attracting childminders into the role and supporting them with costs. And I think that's what we're missing at the moment, is that gap between kind of the grant that government offered and what we can now provide them. And I think where possible, it would be really great to kind of offer some financial support for childminders in the form of a grant, even if it's to help them with training, if it's to help them with their medical, hospital, doctor appointments, certificates. All those costs add up for childminders, and I think they just need to see some support there. And also thinking about the 3 and 4 year old rates of childminders, we know that the 3 and 4 year old rate, across the sector is low. This significantly impacts childminders, but we are seeing some local authorities who are now topping up funding rates for childminders, especially the 3 and 4 year old rates. And again, I think this would go a long way to ensuring continuity of care, to make sure childminders can continue looking after that child during their 3 and 4 year old years, and B, show that actually we do want childminders to continue offering care, and we do want to support them, and we do want to acknowledge that 3 and 4 year old rate is not quite enough for them now, and what we're doing to support there really. And then capacity. I think in terms of helping local authorities with capacity, there are the new flexibilities. Lots of childminders don't know enough about the new flexibilities. Some of them are taken up more than others. So I think the idea that taking on another assistant as part of the new flexibilities is the one that's taken up the most. And it would be great for local authorities to start supporting childminders with this. Start thinking about where planning permission is required, and where childminders won't need planning permission to take on another assistant. And I know this is a big issue at the moment. I think looking to introduce childminders to schools and parents to offer wraparound care. It happens at the moment, and as part of the wraparound scheme, this became kind of very formal agreement, but childminders can offer support to schools if they're struggling to staff their wraparound scheme, and they can also offer great wraparound care to parents in terms of dropping off and picking up, in terms of after school care. So I think there's much more that needs to be done to link up schools and parents and childminders to offer wraparound. SEND support. We know from our survey in 2024 that approximately 61% of members had concerns around appropriate equipment and resources when they were asked if they would consider offering places for SEND children. We know that childminders who do provide care are so important, that home from home setting, as I mentioned earlier. And we know that childminders want to offer more SEND care, but they just need that support to do so, whether that's support in training, appropriate equipment, or accessing different funding streams. There is so much more that childminders can offer in that area. And again, linked to that is obviously the funding streams. So we know that the take up of supplementary funding streams, including EYPP and DAF, are far lower than other providers. We're not quite sure why this is at the moment. There's a bit of education work that needs to be done there. But we do ask that local authorities support us in this work, speak to childminders about this and what they can do to take this offer up, and encourage take up of the different funding streams. And in terms of the workforce, the recruitment initiatives and strategies that everyone's kind of looking at, please keep going. I think we're starting to think more and more outside of the box. We're starting to take inspiration from other local authorities, and we know what works. We know startup grants work. We know one-to-one support works. And we know that childminders need support in that setting up their own business. So I just would love to encourage everyone to please keep going. Sometimes it feels like we're not making slow progress, but I think eventually that will start to pick up. Childminder support networks and mentorship programs play a huge part in retaining the current workforce, easing that feeling of loneliness that we lose so many childminders to, pairing up experienced childminders with newly registered childminders, and giving childminders a hub to meet and a channel to communicate on. There are so many childminders who, because there's a lack of anything else out there, have started up their own communities and hubs. But I know that they want local authorities to help facilitate that in many areas, or just to give them a place to meet. So that would be really helpful if local authorities start to think about that. And then finally, in terms of supporting the workforce, the new Ofsted inspections. So we've worked with Ofsted very, very closely on the new inspection framework. We kind of fed back our concerns around childminders. They took a lot of those changes on board. Obviously, now that we're seeing that play out in actual inspections, there's some teething problems to look at. But they do need support. The inspection framework and the manual are much longer and much more in depth. And I think childminders do need support with that. So I would love local authorities to start thinking about how they can support childminders, just with that pre and post briefing. Sometimes childminders just want an ear. They just want to download how their inspection went. But also some childminders, are so busy all the time that preparing for an inspection has become such a huge kind of aspect of the role. Even just a sounding board for someone would be great for childminders. So I definitely want to start thinking about how us, Coram Pacey and local authorities can start offering support on the new inspections. Thank you. Next slide, please. So just want to think about how Coram Pacey can support. At Coram Pacey, we're here to support childminders, but we're also here to support local authorities with their childminder workforce. In the last year, we've really stepped up our policy work. We're here to offer support and guidance, gather data and analyse trends that can help you locally, but also raise your challenges with DfE and our network of partners. We have a team now, a policy team, that's doing really great work, whether that's gathering case studies, whether that's analysing data from other sectors, from other providers to show where childminders could sit. And we want to use this helpfully at the local authority level. We've also got a service called Coram Pacey Connects, where we work with local authorities on pre-registration support, professional development and training for your staff and your childminders. And also consultancy support and the promotion of quality childcare in your area. So these can be a range of packages, small packages, kind of or larger scale that we can do to support. And then, as I've just highlighted today, we also have the contract that we do in Cambridgeshire to oversee kind of their end-to-end childminder strategy and support. We can look at implementing something in your area of that scale, or we can also look at something a bit smaller about specific schemes on recruitment and retention. So what we're really looking today is just want to get some feedback really on how your childminder strategies are going, how Coram Pacey could support, whether that's policy, whether that's training, whether that's contracts, and start thinking about that long-term childminder strategy and how we all together can support each other to help build childminder numbers back up. Next slide, please. And I also want today to talk to everyone about a free offer. So we want to offer free strategic support for local authorities from April 26 to March 27. And that strategic support consists of 2 hours per quarter per local authority. And it will be on a first come, first served basis. And we really want to use that support to help you things like attendance at childcare partnership meetings or other strategic level meetings, support with the reporting on childcare sufficiencies, research for local authorities, advice to local authorities and supporting the development of childminder provision, inputting into consultations, promotion, advice and support sessions to other local authority staff, and just general consultancy support. So if that's something that would be of interest to you, and obviously we are then, working with that local authority, we are learning really important, invaluable information about how childminders operate at local level in your areas, then please do contact me on that email today. Or whenever you want. As I say, it's first come, first served basis, but we're really here to offer our advice and support as much as possible on there. And I think that's it for the slides for me for a minute. Oh, is there one more slide? Sorry, CJ.
No, I believe
No,
you've covered all your slides.
Yeah. Cool, thank you. So that's it from me at the moment, but I think we want to open it up, don't we, James, to any questions or comments?
Thank you very much, Carla. And I'll give you a moment to catch your breath and have a rest, and we'll put all the pressure onto Caroline instead in the meantime. So we've had a few questions already. This is the part of the session where you can absolutely put the content in the chat, or you can raise your hand and we'll bring you into the discussion. This is where we talk, we discuss, we share our own ideas, we construct our thinking, and you might want to share some examples about what you think is working well in your area.